Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. Today I am continuing my quest to paint all of Warhammer Quest Cursed City using speed paints, and today I am looking at the giant bats. But today we're keeping things really simple. In my previous videos in this series, I have done a few things beyond just using speed paint. For example, putting metallic paints down on armour, dry brushing speed paints, layering up, and doing zenithal highlights. But for these bats, we're just going to see what we can do with single coats of speed paint over an Army Painter matte white base coat. So you get 6 of these bats in the set. I'm going to paint them all up at the same time, but in this video I'm going to be focusing on this champion, the big bat. At the end of the video I will show you one of each of the sculpts just so you can see how they all turned out. And as you can see, rather than doing a black base coat and then a zenithal highlight, I have just used the Army Painter matte white spray. And then I'm going to use Grim Black, and I'm going to apply this over all of the bats. We want to make sure we get good coverage, we don't want to leave any spots or specks. We don't want any of that white showing through. And I'm applying this with the brush that comes in the Speed Paint starter set, which is actually a really good brush for applying the speed paint, and is particularly good when you have to cover quite large areas, as with these bats. And while I'm not being really careful as I'm applying the paint, as much as possible I do want to avoid getting this Grim Black over areas that are going to be different colours. So that's things like the stone pillar at the bottom of the base, the little vine coming out of the ground, and those candlesticks. By avoiding overspill onto those areas as much as possible, we will make the next stages of painting that much easier. So we're being quite liberal with our application of the paint here, making sure we get into all of the little details. There are some holes in the wings, you want to make sure that you get paint inside those holes. You definitely don't want any white showing through because we're not doing anything else on these bats apart from applying this black. Of course, there's much more you could do with these bats. You could apply a second coat of Grim Black to make the skin tone darker. You could dry brush them with a grey and then apply maybe Grim Black with a touch of purple in it to get a nice purple tone in the highlights. You could carefully paint in the fangs and the horns and the claws, but we're not doing that here. Honestly, we're keeping this as basic as it gets. And when that's dry, I actually think that looks really nice. The black has gone into all of those details, all of those recesses. It's really brought out the definition of the miniature, and the black itself has an almost greenish quality to it. It's a really nice rich colour. So I'm pretty happy with how that has turned out for a single coat of paint. Next, we are going to do some touch-ups with matte white. This is just to go over areas where we might have got some of that Grim Black on areas where we are going to paint a different colour. So there was a little bit of overspill here on the base, I'm just going to paint over that. Anywhere where I haven't been quite as neat as I could have been. Then we're switching to Gravelord Grey, and we're just going to apply this onto the scenic elements of the base where we have rocks. All of the bat miniatures have broken pillars and things like that they are flying around or crawling over, and a nice coat of this Gravelord Grey will just bring out the details. I've used the grey directly over the white numerous times now, and I'm always really impressed with how it turns out. And again, we just want to make sure we don't get it over areas that are going to be other colours, like the little vines and the candles. It is tempting sometimes to slap the speed paints on as quickly as possible, but taking an extra moment just to be a little bit careful can result in you getting a finished result a little bit quicker than if you are more slapdash about it. Next up, we are going to the dark wood, and we're going to use this for the vines and little woody areas on the bases. I have painted vines like this in the green on other miniatures, but I wanted the brown on these, just to keep the miniatures a little bit dark and brooding. And you can see I've switched to a thinner brush for this, just to make it a little bit easier not to get any overspill. And then we are switching to our final speed paint, which is Holy White, and we're just going to apply this over the candlesticks because Games Workshop apparently has the understanding that Gothic horror means candles on everything. So a whole bunch of the miniatures in this set have little burning candles, and the Holy White looks really nice on them. And that's it, that's the finished thing. All I've done after finishing with the speed paint is apply some Sterling Mud texture paint to the base, and then I've painted the rims of the bases. For the champions, I've based them with red because it just makes them stand out if you need to know where your champions are on the board. And then for the other miniatures, I used Steel Legion Drab. And as I mentioned, there's a lot more you could do with these miniatures. There's dry brushing, there's second coats of speed paint, adding a little bit of purple or blue to the skin tone of the bat could really make a nice rich colour for them. But I am leaving it at this. Very quickly, I will just show you the other sculpts in the set because you get 6 bats total, 3 unique sculpts. As you can see, this one has a little skull in the base, so I just used a bit of the pallid bone on that. I'm always really impressed with how the pallid bone turns out. And then we have our final miniature here, which just has a swarm of bats crawling over a broken pillar. And that's it, job done, 6 miniatures painted in just a few minutes. Not my most exciting painting video ever, but another step closer to a completely painted set of Cursed City miniatures. And that's it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.